Happy Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Listen, we are live. We are live. So I am excited to have you guys here. We're going to talk about episode 79 of the Work and Play podcast. It's been 79 episodes. Honestly, I can't even believe it because honestly, it's just been a lot of work. But we're going to have some play in a moment. So I'm going to bring up Mr. Damian Burris. He's the leader of episode 79, real estate mogul, as well as he had a past in law enforcement. So being able to talk through his career journey, going from law enforcement into real estate, but also everything that happened even before that and in between. So if you didn't check out the episode, go ahead and check out episode 79. But right now, I need you to tune in real quick because you are about to be in for a treat. So I'm going to bring up Damian Burris right now, and we're going to get into this conversation. Damian, how are you?
I'm well, Ari. I appreciate you having me on. How you doing?
I am doing wonderful, wonderful. Shout out to the folks in the chat. Shout out to Julian. They are excited. They're coming into the room. Damian, we are in for a treat. I was just letting people know. So first of all, before we get into the conversation, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the people who may or may not know this wonderful spirit, and then we'll get into it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Damian Burris. um, wow, unpacking who I am. I'm really just a country boy that God has really blessed to do something amazing in the world, and that's help people. From that branches the top real estate company, Black-owned real estate company in South Carolina. I have a movement called or ministry called My Pulpit is Different, and I'm sure we'll get into that later. And several other entrepreneurship ventures that I'm taking on. So that's me.
100%. And the latest that I really, really love from you, it's your motivational speaking. It's you literally like speaking life into us. And I said, you know what? I know I got it, but there are days when I don't. And I just say, let me just go real quick and get a message from Damien because I know it's going to be one. And
Right,
you
right.
keep them coming. So we talked about your career journey. We talked about the details from going from choir to law
Mhm.
enforcement to real estate, right? And in between, you finding my pulpit is different and understanding that your ministry doesn't have to be on a podium, right?
Mhm.
We talked about those details, but since the podcast has launched, how would you wrap up like career transformation in your own words?
Ooh, career transformation. Um, it's been great. It's been great. It's been a lot of enduring. It's been a lot of consistency and just showing up every single day. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is successful people are viewed as they don't have problems. They don't have things happening. You know, me, you were talking off camera, and I deem you to be very successful. You know, you were talking about the woes of entrepreneurship. So it's just been something that I'm having to constantly and consistently decide to get up and do. And I'm sure further into it, I'll get into that word decision. But it's the new thing that I've been pushing that really shapes the present, that affects the past and the future.
100%. I want to get into it right now because the decision, right?
All
When I
right,
when I created the Work and Play podcast, I think I envisioned a lot more play than I
right.
did work, especially in the earlier stages of my entrepreneurial journey. But it has taken me to make decision after decision after decision for me to stay focused. Now, I'm a storyteller, but I love the way you tell a story. So I would love for you to hit on that decision making piece right now, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So, the last time we talked, and I think even before, one of the things that I'm developing is what I'm going to be known for. And the two things that I'm going to be known for, or three, my pulpit is different as the entire ministry. The second thing that I'm going to be known for is the 8-inch world. That's what I'm shaping my voice to be. The 8-inch world simply talks about the distance between ear to ear, 7.87 inches between both ears, right? So the real world that we live in is the world that's in our mind. If we can conquer that world, we can conquer the world that we live in. It's the 8-inch world. Now, decisions came about a week and a half ago. I was contemplating doing something. I was like, I have to make so many decisions throughout the day. And it really stuck with me. So when I got on live, I got curious as about numbers. I love numbers. So I looked up that the average human being makes 35,000 decisions a day.
Mhm.
35,000 decisions a day, from what you're going to wear to how you're going to walk out the door to
Mm.
how you're going to, where you're going to park, what where you're going to take to work, where you're going to eat, all those things. There's 35,000 decisions a day. So there's 7 days in a week. So that's 245,000 decisions in a week. Year to year, 365 days, you make 12,740 decisions a year.
Come on, man.
So now you have to be cognitive of the fact that if I'm making 13 million decisions, if we're rounding up, there is no reason why I should have poverty. I should have lack if I have the ability to make 13 million decisions that affect my future. And a problem with a lot of us is we're using probably 10 million decisions to do the same thing that we've been doing year in and year out.
Autopilot.
Right. And we never get to the fact that we understand I'm responsible for everything that I've done. Right. So you mean to tell me out of 13 million decisions in a 12-month calendar, not one decision you made catapult you to another place in your life? Not one decision you made got you out of the rut that you're in. Not one decision that you made has helped you get closer to a goal or to a dream. I refuse to believe that. And I believe that it's because we're not cognitive of the choice being ours that we think life is left to somebody else, and it's not. We have 13 million decisions to make in a 12-month calendar, so you got to use them wisely.
100%. Now I'm all about the decision making skills, right? And the thing about it is I don't even know what's coming up for me is the fact that people go into entrepreneurship without uncovering some of the things that affected their decision making skills along the way, right? Because
Right.
it's one thing to recognize that a decision not made. And I love Jim Rohn when he says indecision. When he does that talk on indecision, I understand it so clearly now because I'm on the other side of making decisions, right? But there's so many people who haven't seen the light yet
Right.
that have been their decision making skills have been molded by their path and by their past or by whatever trauma or situations they've actually been through. So in your journey with your pulpit being different and having to breathe into other people, how have you learned through ministry how to get people from recognizing that they're on autopilot, that they're not making using their decision making skills to getting to a point where okay, I can do that one thing a day, every single day.
Mhm. Well, it really starts with helping them understand to see the past, and then what they're doing now. I live by the opportunity of a lifetime only lasts the lifetime of the opportunity. So I'm helping you see
Wait a minute, wait a minute. You gonna have to run that back because I'm not even gonna try.
the opportunity of a lifetime only lasts the lifetime of the opportunity.
Wow. Come
Right,
on.
which means I don't have all day, as most people would think, to get anything
Right,
done. So
right.
you're going to have a small window to be great. One thing I love about the military mechanics is, and even federal government, in by 37, out by 57. And it's not that to say that you are no longer good at 57, but understanding the window, the time frame, your body type, your shape, your endurance at 57, it starts to dwindle. So if you haven't got into the military or the federal government by 37, you can't get in. And by 57, you need to be getting out. Because they understand that if we're going to be at optimum level representing the federal government, we have to have people that are at their optimum, that are at their peak. So helping people understand that you have a purpose, but it's going to come by you seeking out what that purpose is. And if in the last 15 years, you've gotten the same results, it's because you've been doing the same thing. So let's do this. Let's try this one exercise. Let's try this one thing. Let's try this next step to see if you get a different result in the next 3 years. Right. Because to me, what's your 5-year plan? To me, that's the procrastinator's anthem. I think that's a question that sounds good, and people ask that when they don't know what else to ask in the interview. Because if you can't give me, if your 5-year plan does not have a 5-month action, then you're not going to have a 5-year result. Because
Wow.
what you're doing presently will show up in the
Mhm.
future. What you've done past is showing up today. So the most powerful tense in the world is present. So
Right.
whatever you're doing now is going to show up.
Exactly. What's your today plan?
Absolutely.
That's gonna be my new. I see a couple of my coaching folks in here. So listen, my new plan, my new thought is gonna be, what's your today plan?
What's your today plan?
We literally read so and you're right, because I think that it lets people off the hook when you ask about the 3 to 5 year plan because they don't have to be specific. And I never thought about that because I'm so focused on like strategic planning.
Right.
Even, and then I also think that I give it, I might even take execution for granted, right? Because I'm such a, you give me the ball, I'm going. Hey, I see let go in the chat, hospitality hacks. We gonna definitely be talking about what's your today plan.
What is it?
So taking like that execution for granted is like, has probably been a blind spot. But I realized thinking about your 3 to 5 year goals as well as your today goal needs to be at the forefront. But if you're trying to change your life, let's just sit the 3 to 5 year goal to the side. I really like where Damian is going with that. So let's talk a little bit about changing your life.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that we talked about in the podcast is, you know, while some people are making like conscious decisions to go into real estate from corporate, for example,
Right.
you were kind of forced out of a career you loved
Mm-hmm.
to go into find a new career you love. So
Right.
what was it like for you to think that you were in alignment with your purpose in one line and then also have to make a decision to pivot at some point when you had to go into real estate?
It was scary. It was scary. Because I'm a person that if I do something, I want it to be done the right way. So I'm very much a perfectionist when it comes to that point.
Mhm.
So walking out of law enforcement and being great at it, being good at it, loving it, having accolades, making Detective of the Year, the youngest detective in the state, all those accolades, I was now faced with having to start at the bottom of the totem pole. And it's not so much that my position or my placement was a problem. It's the fact that I was facing something that I didn't know, but I was curious about. And I tell people all the time, God pushed me out of a window. But what I didn't see in hindsight was the fact that everything that's been happening to me, and I say all the time, law enforcement was my collegiate experience. Everything that was happening to and for me was now going to play a major part in who I was and who I become in real estate. From all the challenging things that I had to go through in law enforcement with dealing with the public, it shaped and molded me to be the person that I'm still becoming today.
Mm. A thought just came up. So before I get into this piece, if you guys are just joining, we're having a conversation with Damian Burris from episode 79 of the Work and Play podcast. And if you have questions, go ahead and add your questions to the chat box now. That way, by the end of the conversation, and we're only here for a few more minutes, that we'll be able to get to your questions specifically. But when you think about, and guys, when he says God pushed him out of the window, he literally means God pushed him out of a window. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna let y'all go see the episode for that. But
Please.
if you were to look back, so you move forward with such clarity, right? But there are a lot of people who don't have clarity.
Mhm.
And I think that there's somebody either in their 9 to 5 or in law enforcement or in corporate who are trying to figure out how do they actually make that leap if and not wait for God to push them out of a window.
Mhm.
If you were to look back 10 years ago and give advice, or 5 years ago, tell me how many years ago was it?
2016. So
Okay, we're looking at like at least 5 years.
at least 5 years.
Yeah, and talk to a person who wants to change their life in that space, right? And doesn't want to be forced to kind of like be pushed into a different space.
Mhm.
What are the things that you would have put in place that you thought of later or that you learned later?
Hmm. Um, what would I have put in place? That's a great question, Aria. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what I would have put in place because here's why I say that. Because the entire time, my partner called me the other day. We had lunch. He's like, "Do you remember when you used to tell me there's something else that I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't know what it is?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "I told my wife that last week that he told me the entire time there was something else that he was supposed to be doing, but he doesn't know what it is." Not that I didn't love the profession anymore. I just always felt a pull. I've always felt a pull ever since I've been in law enforcement, even after loving the career and all those things. I felt like this is not the end. So if I would say anything, I would say develop. Would have developed me a little more. Uh,
Mm.
I was underdeveloped because came from a very sheltered background, very religious background. So I wasn't exposed to a lot. So I feel like I'm remontant. Remontant simply means a second bloom in one season. So some flowers have one bloom a season, but a remontant rose or remontant flower blooms twice in one season. So I felt like I was a remontant rose. Law enforcement was my bloom. I came out as a person, but then I went back in and had to come out and bloom again in the same season as who I'm becoming now and who I am now. So I just kind of felt like being developed a little more in business, in exposure, and those things, especially if you have a call to people. You're going to need to learn how to juggle different personalities and different traits. But what I will say is, if you're on a 9 to 5 and you feel a pull, not a push, two different things. If you feel a pull that you're supposed to be doing something else, go with that. Because what you have to realize is, if God has called you to something, things are going to happen, but the way has already been made. And I think I talked about this. One thing I love about the military is they send supplies before the battle. Whenever the military transfers overseas, there is supplies already ready for them to do whatever it is they're carrying out. So if God is pulling you to some place and you feel a real pull, not a push, you feel a pull, then you need to act on it.
Whew. Let me tell you what just hit me. So when I was in corporate there, and I exited, right? Because I also felt a pull.
Right.
But I stopped listening, right? I stopped listening to that calling. Along the way, I did get distracted. And I talked about this yesterday on the live. But the point that I'm making right now is, when I went into my journey, I learned a lot about myself, because I feel like I hadn't done a lot of that personal development that you're talking about.
Right.
And so for me, I went into a lot of life situations that I probably wouldn't have experienced when I was in corporate, that could not have happened any other way. So I understand that, listen, your divine calling is your divine calling. But I said, Lord, did it have to be that way?
I'm telling you.
But,
I'm telling you.
so for you, I think of being pushed out the window as being one of those, like, just situations that happen. But for you, did you come across any life experiences that happened in between you changing your career from one to the next, that you were like, yo, if I hadn't dropped out of the normal day-to-day of life, I wouldn't have learned this about myself?
Yeah. Yeah. I knew that I had a gift, but honestly, I'm just now learning that God has strategic, and this is not bragging, this is just me really saying what I learned, strategically coming into understanding that I love leadership. And so much to the point, and customer service. Like, one of my pet peeves, and people that know me, I will drive off from a drive-through. Like, I can't stand horrible customer service. So I will drive off. If I pull up to this place and I say, hey, how you doing? They say, go ahead. I'm out. I'm gone. You ain't got to worry about it.
They're not getting your money.
Right. So I fell in love with leadership and customer service. And had I not been pushed out of the window, I don't think I would have tapped into that, because, law enforcement, you get accolades, you get promotions, but you don't have the ability to lead. One of the benefits of working for somebody, or the disadvantages of being a manager, is they bring out what's best for the company. Being an entrepreneur, you bring out what's best for you. And that's the biggest thing I learned about myself, is that I love leadership, and then also seeing the areas of my personal development that I need. I knew contract law, I knew real estate, I knew all those things, but having to manage managers and personalities was a feat for me in my first year, because I expected everybody to show up wanting to work. I didn't expect to show up. I really kind of fell into this motivational thing, if we really being honest.
Why was that? Were you like haphazardly motivating somebody when you really were just like, can you get up off your butt?
No, absolutely. I never woke up and said, hey, I want to be a motivational speaker. That never happened. It was getting into the space of real estate, but more coupled with helping people see that they deserved a house, that if they worked every day, if they took care of their finances, they deserve a house. And people would literally, Ari, be in my office crying for me telling them that they deserve better, and their children and the legacy. And I didn't know what it was at first. And I still have people writing me letters from 6 years ago, when I first started, saying, your life, your message in your office 4, 5, 6 years ago turned my life around. This lady wrote me the other day, and she was like, the conversation we had when I was bankrupt and all these things She was living in her friend's basement. She now has a house, now is paying tithes faithfully because of the things we talked about spiritually. And her daughter just bought a townhome. And she was like, I would have never gotten to this space in life had I never met you. And I was hard on her. Like I was very hard on her because she was crippling her daughter by revenge parenting. She was giving her the things that her mama never gave her, which vicariously she's trying to live through her daughter, but not shaping her for the real world. So I call it revenge parenting. I'm getting back at my parents by not giving my kids a pseudo love, but not really. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh, absolutely. Come on, revenge. Like there's so much in there. Going all the way back to you noticing that you got an issue with customer service, right? All the way to recognizing revenge parenting in your clients. There's so much to dig into. I'm gonna start here because one, I dropped the clip. For y'all who didn't see the clip, he said, and I quote, murder 30 years, mortgage 30 years.
Right.
I repeat, murder 30 years, mortgage 30 years. And what he said, what he meant by that is you've learned that you also have the gift of being able to sit down with a person and then feel comfortable enough to share their thoughts with you, share their deepest like financial woes with you, and even their personal woes, for you to even know that, hey, I'm revenge parenting because I'm giving my daughter everything that I never had. You know them at a very deep level.
Right.
You learn so much about yourself, and these two careers seem so different, and yet they're so similar. You've been able to unlock people's like truth in this way. Do you see it? Do you see it that way? Unlocking people's truth?
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about that, and y'all gotta go see the podcast. But we talked about that. It's really getting them to a place of comfortability, and for them to understand. Like I said before, I get the pleasure to send you to purpose and not prison.
Yeah.
So that's the difference now. But yeah, you have to be real with yourself and say, hey, listen, this is where I am. I've been jacked up, still have some jacked up ways. God is still developing me along with everyone else. But I love it.
100%. So you said legacy. You said a lot. I'm actually proud of myself that I remembered a lot of the things that I was, as you were talking, I could grab it all. You mentioned legacy, and I think that's where our audience they mesh because, and I honestly I feel like there are corporate professionals who are your clients, even though we walk through the journey of your client on the podcast as well. But so many corporate professionals go into directly just kind of jumping into their first fix and flip, for example, because they believe that that's going to bring legacy. So we have a couple of minutes, and you mentioned like how your clients are saying, hey, I'm able to do this. And we can see you're building generational wealth just by you having your own home and then helping your daughter get a home, right? That's just, you're breaking the cycle. So now, since we have a couple minutes, can you talk about how real estate specifically is allowing people to tap into that dream of legacy? And what actually, can you break it down? What actually does legacy actually mean for you? Because a lot of people say, I want generational wealth and I want to build legacy. But you find people going out there and kind of burn the midnight oil and not giving in to building a team and doing all the things that's opposite of getting that generational wealth. So I'm going to give you the floor a little bit and talk about that path to legacy and generational wealth.
Wow. I think legacy, we talk about legacy all the time. And I think when people say I'm leaving a legacy, they think that they're building a legacy while they're alive. I contradict that. I don't think a legacy can never be, legacy can only be left. You can only leave a legacy. In order for you to leave a legacy, my personal opinion, you have to find purpose. Your purpose unlocks your ability to leave a legacy. And I think when you find purpose, be it financially, be it whatever you are gifted to do, be it when you find your nations of people that you are assigned to. I believe everybody is assigned to a nation of people, whether that be 10, 15, or 2 million. You're assigned to a nation of people that you're going to impact and influence. So I think when we think about legacy, people think that it's what I'm doing here now. That's my legacy. No, but what you're doing here now is your purpose, and your purpose creates this generational wealth that gives you the ability to leave something.
Mm.
Think that's where we get it wrong. We're trying to build a legacy while we are alive, and your legacy is only done when you leave. I remember when Joe Paterno, when they had that big Penn State thing, where he allowed one of his coaches to have some criminal sexual conduct with the players, and Joe was one of the most winning coaches. And when he died, he died during that case. I think his heart just couldn't take it. He died during the case. They went and stripped all of his stuff off of Penn State grounds, his statues, his winnings, and all those things. And somebody said, maybe we should stop saying living legends, because you can only be a legend after you don't have the ability to damage who you are.
Mm.
And I think sometimes we're trying to build and we're trying to be living legends or legacy people while we're alive. And that's great. I think we should focus more on purpose, and the purpose that we generate generational wealth with, or create generational wealth with, allows us to leave something for the person behind us. So
Yeah. I got two more questions. I'm gonna leave the last one. I'm gonna leave the last one for the last because I think it's gonna be. I
gotcha.
think both of them are really good. But on the podcast, you talked about maybe this is the third thing that you said you're going to be known for, because where does replicated fall in the line of it all? Because you when you described it, one, let's not miss that biblical term of oh, that was something you said. Then it was biblical. And you
Uh-huh.
said it. Oh gosh. I'm gonna watch it, it's gonna come back. But Replicated is your program that you spoke about that you were inspired to create. So could you
Mhm.
talk about that one for us?
Yeah. So when Jesus walked the earth, he had 12 disciples. And from those 12 disciples, we now know the Bible. We now know the book. So I believe in order for you to really measure your success is how many people you can replicate or you can put yourself into. So my goal is to create myself better in other people, not just the levels that I've gone to, but far above, but have the ability to put what God has done and what God has allowed me to create into other people. So I want to replicate who I am, my business practices, my beliefs, my ability to speak, who I am, what I do, how I approach audiences, how I approach text, how I approach themes, all those things, and show you how to speak, sound, maneuver the way I do. So my goal is to replicate who I am in the earth as many times as God allows me to through his spirit in me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And for those of you guys who are watching, just because you are watching, you watch the episode of the Work and Play podcast, we have also arranged for you guys to get in on both the replicated deal and this mentorship that you get from Damian. But you
All
can't
right.
really take one and not have the other. You have to actually have both. And I think that spiritually, I'm going to have to replay this because there was something you said, and it reminded me of a day when I was just reading my Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just connected. So the way that you speak, it connects to things that are intrinsic. And I
Right.
think that that type of mentorship and that type of leadership, as you spoke to, can be really, really helpful in someone who's trying to get through something that's a financial journal, like real estate, like
Right.
trying to get into buying their first home or buying their second home or investment property, right?
Right.
Do you specialize in any of them, or do you tackle all of those
All
niches?
three. All three and commercial.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, there you have it, guys. I said I had one more question. And if you guys have any questions specifically, please put it in the chat. But my question is, to the point of living legends.
Mm-hmm.
We you are a motivational speaker. I don't know if you get your inspiration. This is my question of like where you get that inspiration from, because I think that we have trained ourselves to speak in a way where our vernacular is like, oh, my mentor is Jim Rohn. My mentor is everyone else that I could think of is still alive, right? But we say these things, right? And we want to live to the standard that they live, right? And we want to become that living legend. So we rush our greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with that being said, I think about some of the people I listened to who motivated me to get to where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
With that aside, because this is not particularly you trying to be living legend, who motivated you to get to where you are today? Who motivates you with the present tense on a daily
Wow,
basis?
great question. I have a couple of people that motivate me. Probably at the top of my list is Bishop T.D. Jakes. Go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say it.
You already know. It's so
Go ahead and say
expected.
it.
Yes, yes. Come on.
Second at that list would probably be Tony Robbins. He's what he does in rooms with people is life changing. He has something called Date with Destiny, where you really go in and you meet destiny. So it's incredible. The third person, definitely newly started following and listening to would be Myron Golden. He's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. So those would be my top three that motivate me. Who's inspired me tremendously? I'll have to say and mention Dave Shands. He's a workaholic, and for giving me an opportunity and a platform to speak and stand on his platform. So definitely honorable mention.
100%, 100%. Shout out to Dave Shands. We all love Dave,
Absolutely.
as well as all of the people who, like you just mentioned. And I gotta check out Date with Destiny. That sounds amazing.
Ariel,
Yeah,
listen, when you get time, watch something on Netflix called "I Am Not Your Guru,"
100%.
and hit me back when you see it.
Okay, I got it. Listen, this has been amazing. Those of you guys who are tuning in, you literally, what did they say? Rob the bank, because this was a really dope conversation. And we got our own personal motivation in our community, specifically for folks who are on their career transition. Now, if you tap in with Damian, you can get inspiration, you can motivation, and you can get real estate tips, as
Right.
well as training to actually get into your first home and become a real estate agent. But
Absolutely.
before we get out of here, Damon, I would love for you to speak to the person who's listening right now who needs a little bit of inspiration to get to that balance that you have, that work and play, and to even get through those entrepreneurial woes on their journey. The floor is yours.
I would say to the person that is battling anything at a crossroads, the biggest problem that you're going to face is not knowing who you are. You're one of one. You are rare. You are a jewel. You are a unicorn. Don't settle for being somebody else, because when you are, you now misplace everything that God has aligned for your life. And I believe, and you have to know that there are so many things that when you tap into the purpose that God has given you, you're going to see a way be made. And it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be less strenuous because it's already been designed. It's not hard for a ball to bounce. It's not hard for a frisbee to fly. It's not hard for water to be wet. It's not hard for heat to be hot, simply because it's operating in the gifting that it was designed for. And when you tap into the purpose of what you were created for, your life is going to take off the same way.
Damian Burris, everybody. Episode 79 of the Work and Play podcast. My gift to you. I'm going to put the link to the original episode in the chat here on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you guys want to check out a little bit more of Damian, you can check that out. And I'll also add his Instagram and his tags in the comments below, as well as the replicated when it comes out. You guys are going to be the first to know. So until next time, you guys be blessed. You guys be great and have a wonderful day, y'all. Peace out.
Bye.